What does a movie legend watch when the cameras stop rolling? Most people stick to the blockbusters, but the real magic is hidden in the obscure. We're uncovering 10 foundational films that 5 legendary directors and actors consider essential viewing. Take a look at Scarecrow. It's a 1973 road movie where two titans are swallowed up by the empty American highway. This isn't just a forgotten gem, it actually took home the Palme d'Or at Cannes, yet it rarely gets the mainstream credit it deserves. Gene Hackman throws his shoulders forward, pushing a tough guy act to deflect a world he can't control. Beside him, Al Pacino shrinks down, carrying a quiet, nervous energy. The silent moments do all the heavy lifting here, as resentment builds up in boxcars and empty diners, while they try to fix each other without having any of the right emotional tools. Cillian Murphy said it best. It's an absolute masterclass in acting. It's essentially two actors at the peak of their powers. He zeroes right in on this bare-knuckle approach, pointing straight to how real the friction gets when two broken men use thrift store coats like armor to hide from a genuine connection. Decades later, it's still the definitive blueprint for American cinema's most uncompromising character studies. The sun beats down on that Saint-Tropez villa in La Piscine until the heat feels heavy enough to touch. It looks like a postcard from the 1969 French Riviera, but the beauty hides a real sickness. Alain Delon and Romy Schneider lounge by the water, their bodies carrying a deep, unspoken envy where every move feels like a play on a chessboard. A recent 4K restoration has brought the film's saturated colors and sharp grain back to life, making the tension even more palpable. The camera stays tight on the expressions and those sharp looks they weaponize once Jane Birkin walks into the frame. Cillian Murphy points right to what isn't said, the subtext between the characters and all that energy vibrating beneath the surface. He's right. While they smile and pour drinks, they are quietly manipulating the hell out of each other. The luxury acts as a clean mask for pure, bitter jealousy. It remains the gold standard for the psychological thriller, a masterclass in building total dread through nothing more than a sun-drenched silence. Nature has zero interest in your dreams when you're stuck in the freezing mud of the Tree of Wooden Clogs. Set in 19th century Italy, the film follows 4 peasant families whose lives are dictated by the brutal cycle of the harvest. You won't find any grand heroes here, just a daily war against starvation, where the land runs the show. The 3-hour runtime demands your patience, but that slow immersion is exactly how the film makes you feel the weight of every season. By using real locals instead of actors, it captures a cautious stoicism, where one wrong move means total ruin. Al Pacino counts this as one of the few movies that truly matter, calling it a work of realism stripped down to its most human core.
5 or 6 movies I really think are the greatest. But I know I always like The Tree of Wooden Clogs.
The inescapable cold feels physically present in every frame, proving you don't need a high budget to change how an audience sees the world. It leaves you with one chilling question. How long would any of us last when the only thing between us and the dirt is a pair of handmade shoes? The real Giacomo Casanova didn't die in a lover's arms. He ended his days as a bitter, washed-up librarian scribbling memoirs just to feel alive. Pulling from those historical pages, Federico Fellini rips the glamour away to build a suffocating, artificial world. Often dismissed as his most underrated work, Fellini's Casanova is Fellini at his most uncompromising. Donald Sutherland wanders through indoor sets, buried under thick white powder, his eyes looking already buried. There is no sweeping romance here. Intimacy is a grim, mechanical routine. Sutherland moves through grotesque aristocratic parties like a broken toy, performing for a society he quietly loathes. Even the ocean is a lie, constructed out of rolling black plastic bags. This total artificiality is exactly why Al Pacino returns to it constantly. He sees it as a study of a man trapped by his own fake persona, the crushing weight of a reputation that eventually becomes a prison. It is a brutal dismantling of a historical myth, leaving you stuck in a room with a hollow clown performing endless tricks for an audience that no longer cares. Forget CGI and digital safety nets. In 1964, Jean-Paul Belmondo was dangling from half-finished Brasilia skyscrapers and sprinting through real traffic with a total disregard for his own mortality. That is the soul of that man from Rio. It is pure kinetic energy, where the hero communicates through violent motion, surviving on nothing but raw adrenaline. The cinematography treats concrete cities and wild jungles like one big, deadly playground. You physically feel every mile of this journey because Belmondo performed these death-defying stunts himself. In an era where we're used to green screens and stunt doubles, seeing the lead actor actually risking it all on camera feels revolutionary. One legendary director was taking serious notes on this authenticity. Steven Spielberg studied this breakneck pace, later admitting, "I saw it 9 times. It was a big influence on Raiders of the Lost Ark." 9 times. You can see the DNA of Indiana Jones in every single frame. This movie wrote the blueprint for the globe-trotting blockbuster, showing that real momentum doesn't need digital tricks. Go seek it out. It's the peak of pure cinematic fun. In Seven Samurai, honor won't fill a starving belly, and a blade is useless once it's swallowed by freezing mud. This film dismantles the myth of the noble warrior, depicting desperate men clinging to a code that's already decayed. The friction between the Ronin and the farmers is visible in every frame. One group stands rigid while the villagers huddle in the dirt. Suspicion poisons every silence because this pact is forged in survival, not duty. When the storms break, the battlefield dissolves into a suffocating nightmare of sludge and chaos. This uncompromising realism is exactly why Steven Spielberg hails it as the greatest action film ever captured. He studied how the terrain itself decides who survives the slaughter. Essentially, every movie you've watched, where outcasts unite for a final stand, is just a remix of what happened here first. It's the foundational blueprint for the modern blockbuster, a reminder that true heroism is usually caked in filth. William Devane returns home in Rolling Thunder, looking less like a returning hero and more like a man still rattling the bars of a cage. He's a hollowed-out POW with a chest full of medals and a hook where his hand used to be. His eyes are just flat, vacant glass. He haunts his old life like a ghost, drifting through a family he doesn't recognize anymore. When the violence finally breaks, you won't find any Hollywood flash. It's a grim chore, shared with a dead-eyed Tommy Lee Jones who simply says, "I'll just get my gear." No questions. Just a shared understanding of the coming slaughter.
The man who killed my son.
I'll just get my gear.
Quentin Tarantino got so obsessed with the film, he named his former distribution company after it, Rolling Thunder Pictures. The relentless pursuit of vengeance refuses to offer any easy comfort, leaving you with nothing but a broken man and a meat grinder. By the time the shooting stops, nobody feels like a hero. You just watch a man realize that pulling the trigger doesn't actually fix a damn thing. It only leaves behind whatever was already broken, just louder and harder to ignore. A razor-sharp blade hidden inside a paper parasol is the perfect metaphor for the freezing world of Lady Snowblood. The lead character drifts through the winter air like a walking ghost, carrying a silence so heavy it feels dangerous. You won't hear any grand emotional speeches. She was born inside a prison for one reason only, to be the vessel for a family's vengeance. Violence isn't a moral dilemma she wrestles with, it's a grim, inescapable debt. Seeing bright arterial spray across pure white snow makes every strike look beautiful, but feel completely hollow. That visual language left a clear mark on Quentin Tarantino, who directly acknowledged its impact. Lady Snowblood was a big influence on Kill Bill. I bought a print of it and showed it to the crew. The real horror of Lady Snowblood isn't the killing, it's the silence that follows. She was raised to be a blade, and once the vengeance is settled, she's left with the one thing she was never taught how to handle, a life of her own. Cool Hand Luke is rebellion boiled down to pure stubbornness. A guy eating 50 hard-boiled eggs, just because nobody thinks he can, sums up its whole philosophy.
Man, you sure can shoot.
Paul Newman smiles through the brutality of a Florida chain gang, turning suffering into a weapon against the warden. Released in 1967, this wasn't just a movie, it was a mirror. For a generation watching the Vietnam War and civil rights movement destroy trust in authority, Luke became the ultimate surrogate. Cinematographer Conrad Hall shot it with a sun-scorched palette that makes the heat feel suffocating and salvation feel impossible. Very few movies capture anti-authority rage this well. Right now, on HBO Max, it appears in Clint Eastwood's Picks, alongside other anti-establishment classics. Once you watch Newman wage a one-man war against the system, armed with nothing but a grin, Clint Eastwood's career of tight-lipped loners reads like a direct inheritance. The film's rebellion hasn't aged a day. It reminds us that power doesn't just want obedience. It wants spirit. And in the world of the chain gang, defeating a rigged system doesn't mean escape. Sometimes the only victory is bleeding all over their boots. Watch Humphrey Bogart's hands in The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. They start still, confident. By the final act, they can't stop moving. Counting gold, checking over his shoulder, reaching for a gun he shouldn't need yet. Back then, leading men didn't crack like this, and director John Huston tore that idea apart. He took his crew deep into the Mexican mountains, shooting on real dirt under a punishing sun, and you can feel that exhaustion in every frame. Gabriel Figueroa's sun-scorched photography turns the landscape into a furnace, where the gold glitters, but everything around it starts to rot. The paranoia never feels distant or historical. It's right there on the surface. Human greed doesn't evolve. And John Huston knew it never would. Clint Eastwood called it one of his all-time favorites. And that makes sense. Huston's real achievement isn't capturing beauty. It's watching a man slowly reveal what he becomes when he thinks nobody is watching. A definitive portrait of greed and psychological collapse, and one of the most unflinching studies of human nature ever put on film. Don't just admire it, let it get under your skin. So there you have it, 5 legends, 10 films. If you enjoyed this list, drop a like, hit subscribe to VintageVerse. Catch you later.